Hello and welcome to Levant TV Headlines. Foreign ministers from Iraq, Iran and Syria have met in Tehran on the sidelines of the World Against Violence and Extremism conference to discuss regional security issues, terrorism and areas for collaboration. Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region says that 727 of its fighters have been killed in the conflict against the Islamic State group since the jihadists launched their offensive in June. Qatar has joined its neighbours at the GCC summit in supporting Egypt under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, whose crackdown on the Doha-backed Muslim Brotherhood has divided the Gulf monarchies for months. Chief negotiator Saeb Erekat says the Palestinians are seeking a UN resolution by the year end that would set a timetable for Israel's withdrawal from occupied Palestinian territory. And US Secretary of State John Kerry has urged lawmakers to adopt a new legal authorization to underpin military action against Islamic State militants for at least 3 years. Now let's take a look at the top headlines in today's newspapers in the Middle East. Starting with the UAE's Khalij Times, which leads reporting that GCC foreign ministers exuded optimism on the future of the grouping while not shying away from discussing their differences and ways to resolving problems facing them. The paper also reports that the State Security Circuit of the Federal Supreme Court has convicted 11 persons and sentenced them to different prison terms for joining the Al-Nusra Front and Ahrar al-Sham. From Lebanon, the Daily Star leads reporting that the former Prime Minister Saad Hariri says Lebanon must step in to lift the siege imposed on the northeastern border town of Arsal by relatives and supporters of the Lebanese captive killed last week. The paper also reports that Speaker Nabih Berri has postponed Lebanon's presidential election to January the 7th after Parliament failed for a 16th time to elect a new head of state. The Egypt Independent reports that a US report on CIA violations against terrorist suspects has revealed that an Egyptian jihadist had trained comrades on dealing with terrorism investigators. The paper also reports that worker protests increased by 17 in November from the previous month, raising the total number to 111 worker protests according to the Democracy Index. Now let's take a look at the top Middle East headlines from UK papers. The Guardian leads its Middle East news reporting that Britain is requesting that its intelligence agencies are given more information on UK citizens when they are detained in Turkey on suspicion of trying to join the Islamic State in Syria. The requests have been made during meetings between the UK Prime Minister David Cameron and his Turkish counterparts amid fears that British citizens are crossing the country's 800-mile border with Syria and Iraq. The Independent reports that a senior Palestinian cabinet minister has died after clashes between demonstrators and Israeli troops during a protest in the West Bank. Mahmoud Alloul, a leading member of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement, said Ziad Abu Ain died shortly after the incident near the West Bank village of Tormos Aya. The Telegraph reports that agencies say the British government is failing in its responsibility to resettle vulnerable refugees who have fled the conflict in Syria. The United Nations hosted a conference in Geneva on Tuesday aimed at getting countries to pledge to take more refugees from Syria, which now faces the biggest humanitarian catastrophe in modern history. Now let's take a look at the top Middle East headlines in international papers. Germany's Deutsche Welle also leads its Middle East news reporting that Syrian refugees, saying that 30 non-governmental organisations, including Save the Children and Islamic Relief, have urged the world to take in a minimum of 5% or 180,000 of those displaced by Syria's civil war. Currently, the international community has provided unlimited safe refuge for less than 2% of Syria's displaced, according to the NGO's calculations. And finally, China's Global Times reports that Iranian President Hassan Rouhani on Tuesday reaffirmed his country's support for the Syrian government, saying Iran will remain by the side of Syria in fighting terrorism. During a meeting with visiting Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim, Rouhani said those groups in Syria which have resorted to arms against the Syrian government and its nation are not dissidents but terrorists. And for more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow. Bye for now.